This week's edition of NJBIA's Minding Your Business is brought to you in part by AT&T, helping family, friends, and neighbors connect in meaningful ways every day. From the first phone call 140 years ago to mobile video streaming today, AT&T innovates to improve lives. And by New Jersey Business Magazine, providing the critical information needs for New Jersey's business community for more than 65 years.
Welcome to NJBIA's Minding Your Business. I'm your host, Bob Considine. Well, family law can be a critical area for folks both inside and outside the business world. Here to discuss the latest family law trends and their own business are leading New Jersey family law attorneys Rosanne DeTorres and Erin DeGeorge from the aptly named firm of DeTorres and DeGeorge. Thank you, ladies, so much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
All right, so listen, 10 years for your firm.
That's right.
How did this start? How did you get here in 10 years, and what's changed? It's a leading question.
It's like a marriage. We formed the firm on April 1st, April Fool's Day of 2011.
Wow.
I met Erin through another attorney, and she was leaving a big firm and was doing a little bit of per diem work for me, and I saw her work ethic and how she treated the clients and how brilliant she was, and I'd been working on my own for many years.
Right.
As a solo, and I thought, wow, we could really make this work and build something together, and that's what happened.
Right. And Erin, this is a big step for you at that point, right?
It was a huge step. I mean, I felt like I was jumping off a cliff, and I just, there was something, it was in my gut. I knew it was going to work, and I just felt very comfortable with Rosanne from the beginning. Like she said, our work ethics aligned.
That's great.
So that was really what it came down to.
So when you talk about what you guys do, family law, it's divorce, it's child support, it's custody stuff. These are pretty weighty areas. So how do you engage with a client who comes to you? Do you have to be the strong, steady type, and obviously what's an emotional time, or is it case-by-case basis?
For me, it's definitely case by case. Everybody communicates differently, and what I've learned in 32 years of practice is that not everybody communicates the same. So I need to understand how to resonate with my client, how to identify with them, how to communicate the way they want to be communicated with. For example, if you're an engineer and you come in with a spreadsheet with all your assets and liabilities, I know you're one kind of a person. Right. If you come in and tell me about the horror of your marriage and who did what to who, then I know you're a different kind of a person. So it really just depends.
Is it a challenge sometimes? Again, I mentioned is often an emotional time. And when there's families involved and children involved and separation of parents, do you have to sometimes take those clients right off the bat and say, hey, kids first?
Oh, definitely. Okay. We absolutely talk about that and how important it is to put the children first, because the court is going to do that.
Right.
Yeah. It's always going to be what is in the child's best interest, not what is in the parent's best interest.
Right.
Because many times that is the first, something that we hear, well, I don't want that. But really what is best for the child, and that's what we have to address.
And sensitivities, I would imagine, are always elevated when they first come to you guys.
It's true. Divorce it's like a death. It can be. Yeah. Many people come to that place and see it as a business transaction, which truly it is in many ways, putting aside custody and parenting issues. But for a lot of people, it's a difficult transition. There's a lot of fear and trepidation associated with what is my life going to look like in the future? How am I going to unravel all these details? But that's what we're here for.
That's what you're there.
Yeah.
And also, there are times people come to meet with us and they just want information. They want to be educated so that it can help with their decision-making process. Right. And then we might not hear from them for a year.
Yeah.
So it's really, I always tell people, we're going to be here no matter what. You have to now take the time to make a decision. Because some people come, they're ready. They wanted to be divorced yesterday. But then there are people who they really want to be educated first before they make such a big decision.
That's a good point.
Right. How about in terms, let's just go back a year and a half with the pandemic. How did that impact family law in terms of cases? I mean, where things slowed down in the court case? In cases?
Yeah, the court had a difficult time pivoting to a virtual environment. In the family law court in the state of New Jersey, there was no such thing as electronic filing, where when we communicated with the court, everything had to be hand delivered.
Right.
Once in a while, you could get permission to fax something to the court. They had no means to absorb filing by an electronic means. And so they had to develop that. So everything came to a screeching halt, to be honest with you. And then the phone stopped ringing. People were unsure. I, for one, thought when Murphy said we were going to shut down 2 weeks, I'll be working from home for 2 weeks. I thought we were going to, it would be fun, a novel thing to do. I had my little office in my house, and then it just kept going on, and it was very quiet for about 2 months. And then it was the floodgates opened. And when, by the time summer came, June, July, we've never been busier.
Wow. Was that a result of folks being together longer?
Oh, definitely.
In one space?
So. Without a doubt, because you have to remember, a lot of times in New Jersey, people, well, they do pharmaceuticals or whatever type of job they have. There's a lot of times the spouse travels, right? So you have spouses who they live, they're away for the entire week, and now they're home 24/7. So it was very difficult for people who were used to a spouse traveling.
But also with the kids being home. Now try to imagine two parents that, let's say, both work outside the home. Now they're both working inside the home, and they're trying to get their kids to do school on the computer at the dining room table. It's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, it is. How about folks who've already been divorced, but they have, I guess, what they're called parenting agreements? I'd imagine that situation is even harder. To remediate those.
Yeah, it became difficult because you had issues with, should the child go to the other spouse, to the father's house or mother's house because they're a healthcare worker, they're exposed to COVID. There was a lot of those issues. Traveling issues, should the child travel to a state because then when they come back they have to quarantine. There was a host of issues, and then it progressed to the stimulus funds. How are the stimulus funds going to be divided? Who gets them? So there were, and now we're dealing with the child tax care credit, right? Because that comes in, and because it was based on the prior year's tax return, it became an issue. So we're still dealing with those types of issues.
And you mentioned, Rosanne, just a few minutes ago, how the paperwork you couldn't electronically file. Once cases started moving, were they done remotely? Were judges being seen remotely? And how is that different from I figured a judge wants to get a sense of the person and be in the same room with them.
It cuts both ways, so you're exactly right. I think, from a judge's perspective, I'm not a judge, but I imagine it's difficult to evaluate demeanor during a hearing where there's where there's testimony. It's much easier when you're in the room. You can see body language, you can watch their eyes. It's difficult when you're on the Zoom video conference because there's a lot of distractions and people just aren't really paying attention, including, I think, the judge. But I've tried since COVID, domestic violence cases virtually. I'm in the midst of a trial right now that has primarily been conducted virtually, days and days of trial testimony. Now, though, some judges, and it depends on who they are and what jurisdiction, they're asking us to come in and present the case. The great thing about the virtual court, though, is they give you a time to show up, and you show up. It saves so much money for the client.
Okay, that's interesting.
Before COVID, we would have motion hearings in, let's say, Somerset or Hunterdon County are on Fridays. Everybody that has a motion on that day comes at 8:30 or 9 o'clock on Friday, and you may wait all day to be heard for 30 minutes, and you just sit there. You can try to work on other cases. You chit-chat with your client. They're paying you to sit there. When virtual court started, they'd say, you log in at 10, you log in at 10:30, you log in at 11, and the client only paid for the time that you were on the Zoom. So it was much more efficient. It was certainly more efficient from the lawyer's point of view because we could get so much more done working on other cases. We weren't just standing around. Now we're going to go back to live court. I don't know what's going to happen, if they're going to stagger us or if they're just going to do what we call the cattle call again, where everybody shows up in the morning and you just wait around until you're called. It's not a good way to proceed.
And also, clients don't have to take a day off from work, right? Maybe they take their lunch hour at 10 o'clock in the morning.
True.
So it really cut down, I think, on people having to take time off, especially if you're unpaid.
Maybe this is a rookie legal question, but is it possible that through a remote hearing that the judge is solely looking at the evidence more than he would if people were in the room?
That's a good question.
Because there's nothing else to gauge by except...
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think it's hard to evaluate demeanor. It's not impossible.
Right.
Because you're cross-examining witnesses and you're presenting evidence, and that is evidence. What they're testifying to is evidence, and the way that you answer a question is evidentiary. You could be very evasive in answering a question, and whether I can see your facial expression or not, I think the court can understand whether you're being evasive or not, and undermining your credibility.
And also who's in the room with the person testifying. We've had that issue.
Yeah, not supposed to have anybody in the room.
Right, because when you're in the courthouse, in the courtroom, it's just the litigant is the witness is on the stand testifying, and they don't have any assistance from anybody else. If you're in a virtual setting, they're in a room, who's off camera?
I had a situation where the witness was on the phone with another attorney that was coaching her during my cross-examination, and we discovered it later.
Wow.
With the phone records.
So what happened post?
She lost the case because when we questioned her about her being on the phone, she lied and said she wasn't, but we had the phone records, and so the judge dismissed her complaint.
Wow, that's something.
Yeah, that's a big no-no.
We're part of it, this incredibly busy time. Were some of it cases you were getting child support and alimony related from the standpoint of people all of a sudden they wouldn't be able to work?
Yeah.
Can say, I can't pay this anymore. Was that part of the deal?
Oh, yes, absolutely. But in the state of New Jersey, you can't file something for a reduction like that because of loss of employment for 90 days.
Right.
So people did have to wait, and then you have to show what you're doing in order to
replicate your income.
Exactly.
Yeah, you have to show your job search efforts, but you have to survive those 90 days. And then let's say you file your application on the 91st day, you're still waiting several months possibly before a court intervenes.
Right.
And if you hit a home run on something like that, what you get is a trial, where you have to prove your financial situation. So it could be devastating to people.
Let's pivot a little off COVID right now. Sort of. How are things permanently going to change as a result of we've had this 12 to 18 month span where things did change? What procedures are going to be different going forward?
Well, the court right now is still having motions virtual, case management conferences virtual, and early settlement panels virtual. So for that, for this foreseeable future is not going to change. The only thing that they are saying now is that if there's a trial and the judge wants you in, you have to be in.
Okay.
Yeah, the trials are going to be live. But in terms of business operations, we have clients now that most people are now very comfortable with the remote way of conducting business.
Right.
So when I say, do you want to meet? They assume, we're going to talk on the phone or we're going to have a video conference.
Right.
That very few people are asking to come in, even though we, at this point, would allow people to come in. There was many, for that year and a half or so, we weren't allowing anybody to come into the office, except our staff.
Right. Well, 10 years on, D&D, we'll call it D&D. You obviously deal with some very weighty issues that pull at your heartstrings. There was a sign I noticed on one of the photographs of your company, and it read, "Not to spoil the ending for you, but everything's going to be okay."
Now, I have to tell a funny story about that.
Okay.
I bought that because I grew up on Long Island, and I saw it in a gift shop.
Right.
And I brought it in, and when we moved, Rosanne wanted to get rid of it. And everybody loves that sign.
Right.
See,
Well, is that kind of what I was getting at? Is that kind of your mission? Is that, obviously you want to represent your client best, but as I said, it's not easy for anybody who gets involved in these cases. So
No,
I'll let her answer that.
Yeah, no, absolutely, because it is going to be okay. And I always tell clients that it's going to feel like you're in mud, and you're stuck, and you're not getting anywhere, and this is taking forever. But there is light at the end of the tunnel, and it is going to be okay.
Right.
And we help guide you to that end. And by listening to the client, what is it that they want? So often, and I hate to be stereotypical, but many times women are never asked what they want. They don't even know what they want.
Right.
So it's really the first time they're having to kind of think about those things. And But it is going to be okay. It really is.
My dad used to say to me, I don't think he really understood what I did every day, but he would say, did you win in court today? And I said, Dad, nobody wins in divorce, everybody loses something.
Right.
And the best resolution is where everybody sort of leaves the process equally unhappy.
Right.
There's no easy way out of a divorce. The best you can say is that you're willing to live, that you've made some compromises, they've made some compromises, and you're willing to live with the outcome without having a trial.
Right.
Because it's always better to be part of the decision-making process rather than have a judge who just met your family, right?
Yeah.
Make decisions about your child and your finances.
Well, good thoughts indeed. And we encourage people to go to D&D Family Law to learn more about Rosanne DeTorres and Erin DeGeorge and their great family law firm. They never lose their appeal. How about that?
I like that.
Thank you both for being here.
Thanks,
Our
Bob.
pleasure. Thank you.
And we'll be back right after this.
Okay, at AT&T, everyone gets our best deals on all smartphones.
Let me break it down. You got your new customers.
They get our best deals.
You got your existing customers. They
Also get our best deals. Everyone gets the deals.
questions.
Got it. But why did you use a permanent marker?
Because I want to make sure you remember.
I'm gonna get a new whiteboard.
It's not complicated. Only AT&T gives everyone our best deals on every smartphone, like the Samsung Galaxy S21 5G for free.
Welcome back to NJBI is Minding Your Business. I'm Bob Considine. Well, NJBI has another packed schedule of upcoming networking events. Here to tell us all about them is NJBI Vice President of Strategic Partnerships, Kate Conroy, and our podcast partner, Vinny Civitello. Check them out.
Hey everybody, I'm Kate Conroy.
And I'm Vinny Civitello.
And I am back again, busting into Minding Your Business for another segment.
It's great to have you here. What do you got for us?
Well, first, I'm delighted to have been invited back. I don't know if you're aware, but the last time I was here was actually my first time on TV. And unlike our podcast,
Other People's Business. Subscribe and review.
my parents actually watch this show. So I figured I would pop back and at the very least shout them out. So, hey, Mom and Dad.
I'm shocked that they get News 12 Plus New Jersey out in Minnesota.
They totally don't. They watch online.
That actually checks.
So anyway, there are a few things coming up in October that I wanted to just make you aware of. We're really excited to invite back the New Jersey Commissioner of Health, Judith Persicilli, for a hybrid event that we're hosting at NJBIA headquarters in Trenton. It will also be available on Zoom. This hybrid event is happening October 15th at 8:30 a.m.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say, given the last year and a half we've had, whoever is in charge of health in this state must be a pretty busy lady these days.
She's ridiculously busy, and that is why we're so grateful that she always makes time for us. And we're also really grateful for her leadership throughout the pandemic.
Cool.
Next, on October 19th, we're doing another in-person event, an HR handbook workshop presented by our HR Council. This will be at the Pines Manor in Edison, so really mid-state, making it super easy for people to get there. And it'll go from 8 until 11:30. This one is not a hybrid because we're going to have small breakout sessions so that the attendees can work personally with the HR attorneys to make sure that their handbooks are solid and in compliance. And the person logging in just will not have the same experience.
Makes perfect sense. Anything else?
Yes, on October 22nd, we're having a really special event. This one will be a hybrid, so folks will be able to attend in person at Forest Gate Golf and Country Club, or they can log in via Zoom.
Tell me all about it.
It's an energy conference, which I know might not sound super exciting, but hear me out.
I am hearing you out.
The Murphy administration's Energy Master Plan has established a policy of being 100% clean energy by 2050.
Sounds pretty ambitious.
Less than 30 years from now. It is ambitious, and regardless of how you feel about the policy, this event is going to dig deep into how feasible that goal is. There will be speakers from across the public and private sectors, including the president of the Board of Public Utilities and the commissioner of the Department of Environmental Protection. This one is an all-day affair, kicking off at 8 and going until 4 p.m. But remember, there's a virtual option. If you can't give the whole day, register for the Zoom and pop in and out when you can.
I'm going to assume, just like always, njbia.org/events.
100% correct. And if I know you the way I know you, you've probably added that link to the bottom of the screen.
Indeed.
It's like magic every single time. And don't forget that every single Monday from noon until 1, we have a virtual networking opportunity called Table for 4, where we start in a big room and then separate into little breakouts of 4 to 5 people for a deep dive into getting to know each other better. And then after about 15 minutes, we do it again in a second breakout room with 4 or 5 new people. So by the end of the hour, you've made good contact with 6 to 8 new faces, and from there, you're encouraged to set up additional one-on-ones to keep the conversation and networking going. And as a special treat just for you, use the coupon code NJBIA guest, all uppercase, when registering, and come as my guest.
I like 100% discounts.
They're the best, aren't they?
They are.
And that's all for me. Thanks so much for having me back, and I'll see you next time.
Finally, today we hear from future business leaders recently honored with NJBIA's Rising Star Award. These are New Jersey College standouts who were presented the award for their academic work, leadership, and community service. Take a look.
The pandemic has definitely inspired me to pursue a career in public health because I find that in the beginning, when there was so much confusion and fear surrounding the unknowns of COVID-19, it was really public health officials doing the research and exposing misinformation and trying to relate the big picture to citizens about ways to protect their health and the health of others.
So professionally after college, I'd like to work with the Jersey City Police Department in public safety. I actually have that lined up for next semester as my spring internship. So based on my experiences I had in the foster system and working with CASA, it has made me want to be a social worker just because of the kindness and persistence that these 2 individuals have taken with me. For instance, Kim Shea, which works with CASA, she has never made me feel left out, especially when it came to the holidays. She was always there. She always took her own personal time, and she would always be there for me. And then with my social worker, Diane Quintanilla, before her, I had many social workers that they never really took the time and effort to really get to know me. And she just always took that extra mile, and she helped me with my personal problems. And she was just a very amazing person with me, and honestly, she had a really big impact on me as well, reason why I want to be a social worker.
The basic idea in my mind was that I'd end up working for a financial firm, and after working for a financial firm, I'd go into other sectors that piqued my interest. But a few weeks back, I spoke with a professor who had loaned me a book surrounding economic philosophy. One of the characters in that book that piqued my interest was a man named Thorsten Veblen. He hypothesized that in the future, the people who would be the entrepreneurs would be innovators. So, and their innovations would obsolete the entrepreneur. So the entrepreneurs of the future are not going to be someone like Ray Kroc from McDonald's. It's going to be somebody more in the vein of Zuckerberg or Gates. And there are huge existential problems that need to be solved, and the only way to do so is using technology.
After graduating from Rider in May, I plan to continue my education and pursue a master's in software engineering. And then from there, I envision being a technical lead that really encourages project teams to create fully functional software, keeping all of the visual, auditory, motor, cognitive abilities in mind. I want to be an advocate for implementing accessibility guidelines and best practices within web applications and software. And I really want to be the one that designs and develops softwares with disabilities in mind, ensuring that all people, regardless of ability, can participate more fully in their homes and communities. Helping people with disabilities is so important to me because I recently joined a program called Unified Sports. So this program partners with Special Olympics New Jersey to bring individuals with disabilities onto our campus to give them a real-world sports experience or a college sports experience. So that passion to empower those with disabilities to shadow stereotypes and really exceed their personal best in life has encouraged me to think of more equalizers that I contribute to in my everyday life. And I've met so many people, they're so incredible, they're great to form relationships with, and it's important that, to me, to keep that up in my career even after I graduate from Rider.
So based on the college experiences that I've had here at Montclair State University, I feel like every day that I go into the classes that I'm taking, which currently I'm doing a minor in child advocacy and policy, Every time I go, the more that I learn, the more it makes me motivated and assures me that I chose the right path.
My college experience at Berkeley College has definitely prepared me to be passionate and confident in my abilities, especially in being part of the Berkeley's honors program and their community-based clubs like the Volunteer Leadership Organization and their National Society of Leadership and Success chapter. Through these organizations, I've really been able to expand my knowledge, address social injustice issues, and really advocate for the need for community outreach that seeks to help others.
My college experience has really prepared me for what I want to do after college in terms of leadership and internship opportunities. So I've been fortunate enough to take on a lot of different leadership roles throughout my time at Rider, the one right now being student body president. And I think while it gives you a chance to get those soft skills like time management and communication, I think it really also prepares you to be able to use your voice and speak up. And then on top of that, I've had a bunch of internships. This past summer, I spent my summer at Vanguard doing application development and making accessibility enhancements to one of their client services pages. So that really solidified that computer science is the perfect field for me, and I can use my passion for technology and also a little bit of graphic design to create accessible softwares for people to participate in their communities more frequently and in a better way.
During COVID, I had to cut back on my extracurriculars to focus a lot more heavily on my academics as I felt that I was falling behind. Unlike many of my very acclaimed peers, I only had a couple of extracurriculars to my name, but those were extracurriculars I took great pride in. And since I'm in my last semester, I've been thinking about whether the choices I made were ostensibly the right choices. In my mind, there's one of two options I could have taken. Either option A, I let my grades slip in exchange for more extracurriculars for the sake of my resume, but I would have lost my current internship at the Small Business Development Center. Or I could go the path that I did, which is I focused on my academics at the expense of my extracurriculars, but I got an internship that will help me transition into the job.
So I think there are a lot of important qualities that are essential when stepping out into the real world. Obviously those things like communication, time management, and being able to problem solve. But two things that really stand out to me are both confidence and resilience. And I think COVID has taught me a lot about that. You know, the ability to recover from setbacks and use them as opportunities to learn and grow, because you never know what's going to be thrown your way, but you have the tools and skills to really bounce back and learn from them the next time. And also, I would say confidence. You know, when we go out to the workforce right after graduation, we are still young and we have a lot to learn from the people around us, but we also bring a fresh perspective into that workplace environment. So learning how to use that voice and be confident in the skills that we've gained along the way.
I believe that there are three essential skills that people need when they go out into the real world. Those being stoicism, creativity, and an innate risk-taking mindset.
So I believe that when going out into the real world, it's absolutely essential to be open to learning and to not be afraid of making mistakes. Because I often find that when you let that fear take over, it can get you locked into a mindset that hinders your growth. So when it comes to entering the healthcare setting, which is always evolving and changing, I really want to make sure that I'm welcoming lessons and mentorships to hone my craft and to continually develop the skills that will allow me to advocate for proper communication and care in medicine.
I honestly feel like you just need empathy, determination, and patience, especially when it comes to the field in social work. I feel like all these kids need is literally one person to care and make them feel like they're being heard and seen, because that's the impact that my social worker and my CASA worker had on me, and that's all I needed at the moment. And I'm very grateful where I am right now, but that's because of them, and I honestly want to be just like them for somebody that's in the foster system.
So as a final comment, I really just want to say thank you to NJBIA and everyone at Berkeley College who has supported me through this and helped me learn how much it is important to know about business and the presence of community in healthcare, and learning that we can always build our skills and be a better version of ourselves to help the community.
All right, some great young leaders there with some very bright futures ahead of them. Thanks to NJBIA's Rising Star Award winners, and thank you for joining us on NJBIA's Minding Your Business. We will see you next time.